tips received and tips given. So what my idea was in anything, in business or whatever else, it's really about relationships. It's about the more you foster relationships and the more connected you are, the better the business is. You know, so fostering the relationship. So it's Linc stands for Letip Is Now Connected. So you'll see at the end when we get to some action steps around this whole thing, what we're engendering to do. So why is Letip for you? Why are you here? When you come in every week, what is it that keeps you coming back? Is it the tips that you give? Is it the tips you receive? Is it the relationships that you foster in the group right here? Is it the meal you get? Is it just the adaptation every week you get used to coming and you get into a habit pattern of coming? I was really struggling with this myself. I thought, well, I'm not getting enough tips. And I think that's what this is going to be generating. What I'm going to be talking about today is about tips received. My hypothesis is that if you feel like you've got an opportunity to get tips, you're more likely to give tips. So sometimes we come in here and we get into a habitual pattern, just okay, now I got to come up with this. So, you know, we scramble around sometimes to give tips. So when I really started thinking about this, though, I looked at my schedule and I saw the first part of the week I had the first 2 clients that I had came from Letip. And for some of you who have products or you have a service or something like that, where you can measure it like cartridges or if you're a printer, you know, that kind of a thing. That's immediate kind of convertible into money, revenue. But service like Erica would have or Tim would have or whatever else, you say you have a client coming. Now, I had clients coming, and when I figured out per month, if I had 2 clients a week, I would have close to between $800 and $1,000 a month. And that was, to me, I started thinking about that. That's an okay return on my investment in coming in. I would like more, but that was satisfying to me to do that. So the little secret I think we keep in the group is that, you know, how long am I going to stay here? You think about, you know, should I come back? Should I continue doing this? What's going to keep me here in doing it? How much longer do I have? How much longer do I want to stay here? How many tips do I need to receive to stay in Letip? That's not a conscious thing you think about, but it's probably an unconscious thing. Yes? Sure. And I think everybody, in any relationship, there's a point in time where you start questioning, should I stay in this relationship? Married couples, I see married couples all the time, and of course I see them in a different state of disarray. But the point is, I think in any marriage, even good marriages, at some point along the way, it's where you get to a place where you decide, am I going to stay in this relationship and really make it work or not? I think everybody goes through that. And I think at that point, when you make the decision to do that, that's when really the relationship gets developed. You really make a commitment to doing it. So you have to think about yourself here about how committed are you in terms of being here, and how committed are you in terms of giving tips and receiving tips. So the other part the question come up was, how do you market yourself? And I started thinking about this, and I started looking at, well, if I was going to be giving tips, what's my contact list? And I started thinking, who are all the people that I could refer you to in some way? And I really hadn't gotten conscious about that. And when I started getting more and more conscious about it, some of the stuff that I'm planning to offer you here started becoming more available to me. On further review here, negative reinforcement here has an initial effect, but limited effect, i.e., there aren't exactly a lot of rewards for giving tips, but there are times if you do not give tips. And we're expected here every week to give a tip. We've kind of discussed it in the board meeting whether it's an average of 1 each week or it's 1 every week. But the point of it is it's pretty much you got to have 1 tip a week. And we'll have the thing where people like don't come for a week, and the rule is if you come back, then you got to have 2 tips. And if you don't, there's a fine. What's the fine, David? If you have a rate, pardon?
$1.
$1. Okay. If you're late, there's a fine. If your phone goes up, there's a fine. Okay? And that's okay, but it's not going to have a real ongoing effect in terms of you really generating a lot of energy, giving tips and receiving tips. There's no or little two-way transaction record from members about tips given or tips received. Letip keeps track of the number of tips that are given and the number of that you receive. But individually, I don't think, does anybody here keep a journal on your contacts? Marty does? So that's one of us. I realize for myself, if I give a tip, I forget who I'm giving a tip to. If I get a tip, it's pretty obvious. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't, but I don't keep a record of it, so that's something to look at. Most of us don't maintain a contact list. I figured out for myself, when I finally figured out friends, family, colleagues, businesses, retail that I knew, I got about 60 or 70 names. So I put it on an Excel spreadsheet. And I thought, this is something, when I get together with a fellow Letip member, I can start going down my list and saying, well, what about this person for John? Is there anybody in the North Shore area that needs an architect, I can start getting more conscious about my tipping. Getting tips is too passive of a thing here. We come in here to give tips, which is admirable. It's a service that we do. I think being of service in the world is a great thing. It's probably the foremost thing. But underneath it all, the thing about giving tips is, underneath it is, what am I getting out of this? Do you not think about that as someone? And if you don't think about it, it's there anyway. It's an unconscious thing you're thinking about. And aside from presentations, there's no system existing for getting tips. So Linc is really, in a sense, more of an encouragement or a program to help you get tips. So the one missing link here is that I'm not sure what the percentage is, maybe you could say, about inside tips versus outside tips. My inclination is that there are more inside tips than outside tips, wouldn't you say?
Correct.
So
about 75%.
75, that tells me that there's not a lot of thinking going on about making outside tips, and the potential of that, if there's 30 members here, and a minimum of 50 people apiece, that gives us 1,500 prospects in the group in terms of tipping. Otherwise, here, they're just 30. We don't think outside tips, but that's really where we can really get prosperous. So the goals for Linc are this: increase the number of tips received as determined by member. And what we're going to work on here is that to have you take responsibility for defining for yourself how many tips you feel is reasonable for you on a monthly or a quarterly basis to stay in the tip. So if you're not really thinking that about staying, I figured out for me it easily pays for what's the total amount per year that we pay in terms of quarterly and for the yearly dues for the tip.
We're coming close to $1,000.
Close to $1,000. Now you need to think about what's the multiple on $1,000. What's the amount that's going to make it really worthwhile for you being here? Are you going to get $1,000? I mean, is that enough for you to come here? And that pays for your breakfast and your membership in a sense, but you need to be thinking on a multiple of, you want to be getting 2,000? I figured out, as again for myself, I thought, well, maybe if I had 2 or 3 clients a month, which, I need to see up to about 20 a month, or 20 a week, excuse me. If I had 2 or 3 a week, that'd be the multiple that I could live with. That'd be almost like times 8. Okay? So you need to be thinking about that. What's the revenue that you get from this? It's not just the number of tips, it's the quality of tips that you get that's important. If we want to increase tips given overall in this group by at least 50%. What we noticed before was that we said we got up to $9.99, and we were going to get one over the top, and Howard was going to come up with someone. We had at our board meeting. But I thought, no, just keep it at $9.99. That's a motivating thing. It's less than, to get to a place. And I know the only sales course I've ever taken, I took a Sandler sales course, okay? And they say the only time people buy is they're in pain. And I don't quite think that's it. You have to have a need or a want, okay? And I think that's what we need to be conscious of in coming here, a need or a want. You need a tip? How about wanting a tip? So, if you get conscious about that, you're more likely to move ahead. We need more focus time individually on marketing from other members' contact lists. In other words, the thing what I need to do, I think Desiree was here, we had coffee not long ago and sat down. And what I would want to do if I met with someone like this is to bring in, okay, here's my contact list. I'm gonna go over some people here that I think might be good clients for you. So we wanna get, for us to take individual marketing responsibility for getting tips. How many of you do that? How many of you really believe that you spend some conscious time during the week putting into marketing yourself for the tip? Anybody? Okay, Rand, good. So, but that's pretty sparse, don't you think? We come in here in an automatic, kind of unconscious way. We float in, we get our breakfast, we do our greeting, we go through the ritual here, the whole thing, and we're not really taking responsibility for getting tips. And again, that's my hypothesis. You get more tips, you're going to give more tips. Another thing is, well, to surpass your minimum revenue expectation of tips received. I've kind of mentioned this before. To set for yourself, what is the minimum amount of revenue received for getting tips that you want to have in being on a tip? And I think if you set that and you get down, if you're just making the bare minimum of 1,000 or less, what's the value of you being here? And what's the value of you taking up that career slot for somebody else who can come in and come charging in here and give you more tips and they get more tips? So it's something to think about. Some of us here, and I'll put myself in it too, I don't tip nearly as much as I should. You know, I'm not, because I'm not conscious of it. I'll be part of the group here. I haven't put marketing thinking into getting tips either. Which the best vehicle for doing that is having a meeting with a Blansky or somebody else, a power partner for me to be able to give me business tips. So the strategy we're doing with Linc is to, Letip Is Now Connected, is to have small groups here that are headed up by a board member. Now, they weren't sent out to the members, were they, this list?
They were not.
Okay, but you handed out one a couple of weeks ago or a month ago.
Correct.
Okay. So what we've got is each of the board members has got a list, and everybody is put on a list. Remember you seeing that list we sent out?
This one's different, by the way, so
This is different,
the
right,
old
right.
one should,
We kind of
yeah.
recollected ourselves and thought through this and made some other assignments. So most of them have got 3 people on each list. Some have got just 2. So the strategy around this is goal setting. Again, taking responsibility for yourself in terms of tips received. Like Matt and I were talking that in our work, you know, if Matt gets like one really sharp, good tip a month that's really going to work, that pays for him being here. He doesn't get one every week. For me, it's probably 2 or 3. You know. For the rest of you, you have to decide for yourself what it is. And it's different all the way around the whole group. The small groups we're going to set up to meet together, either by phone or person, is setting weekly goals too. So, in other words, you need to sit down and say, this week I'm going to, and put a statement around that and be committed to it. So we're going to have weekly check-in calls. There's going to be a thing whereby you're in a group and you cover somebody and then somebody covers you. There's kind of a rotating thing around the group. We're going to encourage you to put together a contact list. It didn't take me long to go through my address book on a number of people that I considered potential referrals for the tip. I get up to my about 60 number. And I think it's been said that we all know about 125 people that we have contact with in some level. So 50 is a pretty minimal estimate. You could easily get to that. So what are the action steps for Linc here? Again, you've been assigned to a group, and each member commits to constructing a contact list list of known friends, family, colleagues, and local businesses. Each member details their ideal profile or scenario for a tip received. So this is, it might be just obvious to you what's a good tip for you. But until you articulate it in some way and you can speak it. We do that here sometimes when we check in, first we get here, or when you give your talk. But it's really interesting, the variety of people here. Kathy's, for instance, got a whole number of things under just doing websites. There's websites for this, websites for that. There's different kind of tips that perhaps she could get. Marcia's got some different ones too. It's not just small business, so there's a whole different things. And I found for myself when I started writing it down, I got up to about 5 or 6 different ones that's a good tip for me. So you need to get that clear so you can articulate it to other members. Each member states their referral goals for tips received when you meet in the group. Each member develops a plan for more tips received. And again, typically the plan, we're going to do these groups on a quarterly basis. So the plan to come out would be is that mainly you're doing this work, getting a contact list, developing a strategy about calls. Like typically, I think that the tips received increases pretty dramatically when you start meeting with different people in the group. And you start checking in with what exactly would it be, Blansky, if I really talked to you and found out a lot of your business clients, if there's some of them, maybe one, just one in there, that would be a good referral or for you, or there's for you coming in here, there's a lot of people that could be referred to you in terms of your healthcare work. So we set weekly goals in terms of doing this with a rotating partner. What we're going to suggest is that in the groups is that, and I've mentioned this to board members, that you start out the lead board member calls the first one of the group, the second one calls the third one calls the fourth calls back to the leader. And that's done on a weekly basis. It's preferable you probably do it on a Monday, you check in with somebody. Now, I've done this, the experience I have with this is that I've done 2 programs where there's a call tree set up. And one was for about 3 months. And it was a rotating thing, and we picked out a program, we did this, and it was a great thing for me to get more conscious about what I was doing. What I realized is that, like most of us, we get very unconscious about goal setting, we get very unconscious about intentions, we get very unconscious about really getting a definitive schedule and a program based on what we want to do. We just kind of tread water lots of times. We get into a floating kind of pattern. So, and here's the other thing too. Courtesy of Mark with the business trifold, I did it with my 50 members. What I did was I emailed each of the 50 members with a letter, a personal letter, introducing them to Letip and to what it could benefit them, along with an attachment on the business trifold with my name, not Mark's, and with my company logo on it, rather than Mark's. Or you could put the Letip company logo on, I assume, too, at some point, right? So that's another optional thing to consider to do. So that's basically it. Let's just do first questions, responses, reactions, see where you're at about it.
I think the idea of us getting together in small groups is good, and I think it'll also be contagious. We want to meet with more of our members.
Thanks.
What happens, Dave, when people move in and out of the group? How do they get reassigned or?
And what we're planning to do, this is just a plan, we're just getting started with this, is that the group will stay together for 3 months. And then at the end of the 3 months, there'll be reassignments of the group. And what we're projecting is that because if it's like if it's 3 months in a quarter, which will be a little less now, that means if you're in a group of 4, that's 3 weeks with each partner. So we're projecting, at least in the beginning too, that you work 3 weeks with your calls. For instance, here in Puttras's group, he's got, he would call Alvaro would call Kathy, Kathy would call Blansky, and Michael would call David Puttras. So that would be the format that's going on. We haven't quite discussed this, but also that we would be having the board member that's leading it would be the one holding people accountable. So part of this whole thing, I can get into more about the dynamics of doing the phone calls. There's going to be kind of a protocol list, kind of a little menu that you can follow in terms of doing the call too.
This is all internally created, right?
What do you mean?
And it's interesting, I like the whole concept, but I suspect without all the Letip chapters, there's no model similar to this. Has anyone asked Janet Hansen?
I don't know, or we're a little reluctant to do that. But but I got a call last night from somebody in Oregon, Portland, Oregon, that's with Letip. I don't know how in the world it got out.
Oh, I got that
Yeah,
You got it too?
oh, yeah.
too. Yes.
Everybody?
But they
Okay.
went into the Letip website.
Okay,
Oh,
he's trying to get
there.
business or something, I assume. Okay, fine, so, but, let's forget about the other chapters. Let's just focus on us. Can we do this? And the point of it is, you know, every system is imperfect. So the point of it is to point ourselves in the right direction and follow the course.
I'm a little bit curious as to exactly what, I mean, are you trying to, and I think this is a great idea too, are you trying to produce more tips in the mold that the tip currently tips?
Yeah.
Or are you looking for it sort of some other way?
Well, the key thing, as I said, my hypothesis is that two things. One, you get more tips, you're gonna give more tips. So the tip organization has a requirement, is that standard that we tip once. So that's done, okay? We wanna up that. And I started thinking about this, like, what's the reason we can't up it 2, 3, 4 times more than what we do? I mean, you know, but what we said at the board was 1.5. And we can increase it 1.5. And by the way, we didn't make it last year. If you have an average in this group of 25, and we meet 50 times, that's 1,250 tips. We got 999. Okay, so we really didn't make it. So go ahead.
I was gonna say, it seems to me that the one piece of this that's missing that I think you could build in is another way to increase tips is to increase members. Because
Well, that's obvious.
the more,
Look at this gentleman here about the flowers. I've been thinking all the time. I try to get Seville Flowers to come. I mean, this is fantastic.
Right,
I
it's
mean,
a
there's
great
a lot
idea.
of people that can refer to him.
but I think that in addition to building tips, you wanna build in the idea of building members, because the more members you
Yeah.
have, the easier it is to tip.
Exactly.
That's sort of my point.
Yeah, there's no reason we can't get up to 40, 45. I mean, really, that would be a good goal for us to expand this room. But I think the other thing, Marcia, is this is focusing on, Ray said, wait a minute, this is a whole different focus here on getting tips rather than just getting tips. Because again, I do think the unconscious process in terms of if you don't get tips and you keep coming every week and you don't get tips, the likelihood is you're gonna think, why am I coming? Yes? I think everybody, Randall's the only one that really raised his hand in terms of, he's got a plan that he does, or he keeps track, whatever.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Does everyone understand what the concept of this is? Who thinks the concept is giving more tips? Raise your hand.
It's a combination. Let's give
Who
it all
thinks the
together.
concept is getting more tips? Perfect. That's what it is. It's selling ourselves and taking these groups and selling ourselves. What's a good client for me? What do I do? What can I do? Who am I looking for? What is my goal to get more clients?
It sounds a bit Machiavellian to come in here and think about, okay, what's the money I wanna make, but that's why we're here. We're here to get more revenue out of business tips and being here.
David, I wonder if a little bit of role playing here with somebody who's got, you know, who knows this program a little bit more than just the last 10 minutes, would be helpful as far as, you know, picturing what happens during these connections. How are these engagements playing out?
Let me read you some notes I put on this, okay? So when you're talking about making a phone call?
Right.
Okay, so I'm calling you. What I want to know about, and what I want to do is to support you and hold you accountable about your weekly plan. That you'll have stated your weekly plan in terms of a small group and with the board member leader, okay? You'll have done that. You'll say, this is what my intention is this week. So the next week, you know, you come in and I'm talking to them and I ask you about your accountability. And can I support you on this? And what do you know, we'll talk about what you need. How are you doing in reaching your goals? What is your plan in getting more tips? Where do you need help coaching and getting more tips? How are you using your contact list to get more tips? Another one would be, what are you coming up? What are some new ideas you've got about kind of reinforcing your marketing plan to get more tips?
So is this connection basically reinforcing another's idea about what they're doing in order to get
Yeah.
more tips? Is any part of this component, you know, contacting somebody and saying, well, and telling them what you're looking for.
Well, you might say, you know, Mark,
And, you know, it's like, you know, please look out for this, this, and this, and this for me, you know, while you're out and about. And,
Exactly.
you know, let me help you also guide your efforts as far as getting more tips from others.
or I could say, but did you know about so-and-so? I think they're probably in need of your service too, you know, in that conversation. Yeah.
Kind of to reinforce this, by having a small group, you're gonna get a much better understanding of what that person in your, other person in your group wants. And only by, you can't get that for 30 seconds passing a bucket around.
Right.
So, absolutely, everything you said is absolutely right on the money.
Again, the basic underlying thing here is to create more consciousness during the week. That, again, it was very, very clear here, and checking in here, is that people don't think about getting or giving tips during the week, almost at all, until they come in.
It seemed like with that role play phone call that you did, that you almost had like a, I don't know if it was a list of a few or several questions. And it was sort of like, now you've thought about this a lot, so you've got this, either list of questions on paper or your, and to get some consistency, and not everything has to be the same, but as of a model of how each of the groups will operate, I think it would be a good idea to email that list of those questions that you just went through, because I won't remember all those.
No, you'll get a copy of that.
Mhm.
The group leader will have it, and you'll get emailed a copy of all that, so you'll know where to go with it.
So to get started, what would the first steps be?
The first step, here's the task that I want to assign each of you in a way. Get a contact list. Check out the people that you do business with, colleagues too, family, friends, everybody that you would consider in your contact list. I've got an Excel spreadsheet. I'm planning on putting some kind of record keeping on that in terms of where my tips go to, you know, these people, doing that. And then tips received, I'm gonna keep track of it, that's one. I'd suggest that you do the other thing about downloading Mark's business trifold and putting together a letter and sending it out to your contact list. That'll generate some marketing consciousness around the whole thing. Third thing to do is to figure out what are your goals. You know, what are, and first, and also, what are your quality tips? To get some sense around that, write them out. And what's your biggest paycheck? You know, what would the biggest paycheck look like for you if you got somebody? Artur, what would be yours? Artur, what would be your biggest paycheck? You'd have a company, right? Not just individuals saying, I need a cartridge. You'd have a full company with about 50 to 100 computers sitting there, right? That would be a big paycheck for you. Sam, what would be yours?
I'm looking for a monthly postcard, a monthly newsletter, a monthly consistency in business. So what I'm looking for is a client that uses does a monthly program.
How about Greg? How about you? What would be your biggest paycheck? If you got a referral to you in terms of trust or whatever you believe, what's the biggest one for you? That'd be the most beneficial for you?
Well, I mean, it's a hard thing to answer because the biggest paycheck depends on how wealthy the client is and how much planning they need. I mean, it's all over the board, so I don't know.
There you go. See, it's difficult to say that, but the wealthier client would be the biggest, right? So if you got somebody that doesn't have a lot of money and whatever, that.
How about a nursing home? To get your foot into a nursing home where you can have contact of 75 residents or 100 residents.
Well, that's not how it's worked out. I mean, I do present, as you know,
Right.
at senior living facilities. None of them come to the meetings, okay? The only ones that come are the ones that I send your postcard to. I mean, that's just how it works out, okay? And which is fine, I mean, because that's why they let me use the facility, because I advertise their facility with that postcard. And I get the free use of it. So, but I don't know if that has to do with the biggest paycheck. So I don't know how to even answer a question.
Yeah,
I've had $40,000 paychecks in my career, they don't happen that often. The usual paycheck is,
That's it.
is $2,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, and that's typically what you're gonna get. I'm just start thinking about that in terms of, anyway. But you're asking your question about, steps to do with this. So the other thing to do would be write out what your quality tips are, either your biggest paycheck, whether it was a quality tip to you. And also then, set your goals, how many, I would say, how many per month that you want to give tips here. And you have to also keep in mind, you need to average or be at 1 tip a week given. So that's going to increase. I would tend to think, again, the hypothesis is if you work on getting tips, we're going to get a heck of a lot more tips here. I'd love to see us 2-3 times more tips than we're getting right now. John?
I like all the focus on tips given and received. There's another aspect to this group that I've found really valuable. My service model is I provide a lot of service to very few people, so I'm not coming here expecting a lot of tips, although I've received some. What I get out of Letip is camaraderie with other professionals. I learn what's current thinking in the professional world generally. And I do learn things that can help me promote my business, but my balance sheet really isn't tips given and received, money earned. For me, it's much more passive, it's indirect, and I like to focus on increasing tips, and I intend to participate as much as I can. But the other side of this, and I think a lot of people would agree, is the weekly engagement with other professionals. And I will learn things like, Sam and his postal service deal that I intend to follow up on. I would never have known about that if I didn't come to this group, or having met Norman, who's helping me do some marketing things. But for me, it's a slower pace on tips given and received, but more improvement in the quality of my professional work and practice that I get from being here.
Yeah, relationships, I think, are important here, too. I think the value of getting to know people, and there's a certain kind of unexpected return on your investment here, too. So
It's harder to measure.
we're getting down to the close here, probably, to finish this off. But Matt?
John, I'd like to thank you for your candor there. I'm kind of in a similar situation where I'm service, I don't need a ton of tips. The flip side of that for me, and I just want to throw this out there, it's certainly not any kind of commentary on what you just said, because I think that's very valuable what you just said. If I want 1 tip a month, that's 12 a year, in my mind, quality, right? But at the same time, there's no reason why I can't do 36 going out, right? The dollar amount or the quote unquote quality might differ, okay? But I think you can also look at going out and be happy with maybe 1 a quarter is okay for you because of the work you do. 1 a month, but I look at the more I got going out, the better everything's gonna be.
What do you mean going out?
More tips that I have for other people.
Ah, okay.
Because I'm like John, I don't need a ton of tips.
The ratio of your tips given to received would be different.
But I'm fully on board the idea that I need to crank out more tips going out, and I'm happy getting the small but quality number that I get.
I think the other thing that will come out of this, especially in rotating groups, is having a better understanding of how to tip each other and what works. I mean, things like, for example, we've talked about this before, you can't give a lawyer a phone number and tell them to call back. It's just not ethically how lawyers practice. That doesn't work. Some businesses are in a better position to sort of poll their clients and generically refer business, whereas others of you need to do it on a much more client-specific basis. And I think not only will people better understand how to refer business to each other, but maybe this sort of self-examination will give you a better understanding of how you need to cultivate business from your own contact list.
One other thing, one other thing too, in terms of setting goals, what I found in the work that I've done with this before is that my typical pattern is to set the bar really high, and then I don't reach it. And then there's disappointment. So what I found is to get a very reasonable shift in percentage of increase, to set it up. and to reach that, and then when you start reaching that, then you can move your bar up. You don't wanna move the bar up too fast.
I would agree with that.
Marty?
Yeah, I was gonna comment on the bar, but when you said it was me, I think the opposite approach. I said it too high so I could be happy with second place.
We all have our individual
Of course,
personalities.
that's what we do psychologically. But I'm almost the opposite here. While I enjoy the camaraderie, learning about businesses, I need the numbers. Because I have probably the most competitive business inside this group. People are getting millions of calls every day. And the first gut reaction is, oh my God, not again. So I have to differentiate myself again by service and showing how I'm different because I don't promise them anything like everybody else promises the lowest rate. I promise to be exceedingly competitive because, and again, I use the same joke I use all the time, I can make as little money as I want because I buy the rates right from Visa, MasterCard. And that's what gets me in. So unfortunately, or fortunately in mine, I do need the numbers because no matter how witty I am on the telephone, and I've got a set pitch that's been perfected over 10 years, you're just not going to get into a high number of people.
We could look at the numbers, or you can look at just being active and conscious and moving forward and doing it. I mean, my whole theory in life is about passivity. Life is like a current, and if you can't step into that current and deal with it, you get past it, it'll just keep pushing you back, and you won't go anywhere. So, as long as you're moving forward, as long as you've got some intention about what you're doing, most of us forget intentions. We don't start our day with intentions. We don't look at it that way. We're not sometimes on purpose about what we're doing. The object here, in terms of the tip, is to be on purpose and to be conscious about your giving and receiving tips.
I think you wanted to leave some time for advanced tips.
Can I have one question about the contact list?
Okay, you got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes,
Yeah, we're good.
okay.
Yeah, we're good time-wise.
One, you have the contact list of people that you think, let you know, and maybe there's a few in there that would be good for the person you're working, you're gonna, how does that work with the tip rule that the person is expecting the call?
I'll jump in on that one. I hit a home run a couple weeks ago with Desiree. She came into my office and we're just chatting and I opened up the book, my contact book. I called him right there with her there. And I said, hey, you gotta meet Desiree. She's gonna come by and talk to you. She wound up signing up 2 people and got in the door in 3 other places. Now, can I do that for everyone in this group? I don't know, but that's what happened, and that was.
So you are contacting your contact?
Yeah, I called a couple people and said, hey, she's gonna call you. Please treat her like you would treat me.
And that would be 3 tips, what you just said.
Yeah, I tipped her on everyone. She had an appointment and, with everyone.
I wanted to
See,
say-
what it is, Ray opened up his book, contacts, and then while you're there, if you open up your contact list and I say, one of your clients is a automotive dealer, okay? I can go to you, hey, that could be something good for me. They go through a lot of business cards, they have a lot of employees, would you do me a favor? So you pick up the phone, call your client and just say, I was talking to one of my Letip members who sells business cards, and that's your tip to me.
Yeah, and that's a good
Okay,
lesson.
so I'm letting you know, hey, that could be something good for me by looking at your books while we're talking.
Yeah, just a quick comment, that's a great lesson across the board. I belong to several chambers, and I met with a guy who could have used my services, but unfortunately he's locked into a contractual obligation with somebody who allegedly can save him on all of his expenses or reappraisal. I get a call 2 weeks later from one of his friends who becomes my client. So even if you can't use him right now, they will bring you other people, and they may use you in the future, that type of thing. You keep the doors open in a positive way.
The brain's like an antenna, you shoot out signals, and there's synchronicity, and there's all kinds of, once you start making contacts, a lot of stuff starts happening.
Absolutely.
We're not getting rich by me giving you my company, by me giving you my we're gonna get rich by me giving you 50 of my people clients. You understand what I'm saying? The object is outside tips.
Real quick, Tom, can you talk about what's going on with my business and your business?
Sure. Ray brought me into the group and learned about what I do. I work with small businesses. Turns out that in the last 6 months, Allstate started going to a different system for getting leads and for running their business, and they're all internet related. And basically what VoiceWalker does is it uses the internet for getting your telephone out instead of old copper wires. And that ties into what every Allstate agent who joins this program, which may be all of them eventually, can become a part of. And so what it does is anybody who's using an old system has an opportunity to go to an internet-based phone system, and that opens the door for me.
It's basically, and I've introduced you to two Allstate agents right now, and more are in the pipeline for him, just based on what he's done for me.
One last question or comment, we'll finish.
I just want to talk a little bit of, like the job that I do. I probably meet a lot more people than anybody else here because, I kind of visit every single company, like here, on a basic day, on a daily basis. I go to lawyer offices, doctors, you name it. And then usually, like I said before, on my phone I have, like all my Letip group, like members. And like for instance, when I went to Marshall, I'm not the kind of person that just go and say like, oh, this is what is wrong with my machine, and I just focus on that, fix the machine and leave. No, I usually like talk to my customer and say, what else do you have, like my service, this and this and this and that. Because like David says, like, I'm not here, like just to make, honestly sometimes when someone, not offense to anybody, because, business is business. When someone ordered, an ink for me, sometimes I don't make any money. Okay, what I'm going through is, like to see if later on I can offer that customer, like our services, or, in the future, they use me, like for labor on the machine that they have. But for that, like the kind of person, that I don't stay quiet, I just talk to my customer and say, okay, when I went there, I talked to your secretary, and then I knew 5 minutes later, every single machine that they have there, what can I do for them, and the prices for everything that she needs in their office.
So one thing leads to another.
Correct.
Right?
So, like for instance, I go to many places, and then I haven't really put my mind, like, you say, like to say, okay, you know what, let me try to offer them, like other services that I have, with my team members. Once in a while I do it, or sometimes, when I talk to the customers and they, because a lot of people will ask me.
Finish up, Arjun, in a
You
second.
could have, like someone, like for phone business, and then I'm like, okay, I do have it, or, you have an IT guy, and I think about Mark right away, and then once again, I do have, like every single contact in the group on my phone, so, sometimes I don't have to go, to the internet and, pull it out, I just, have it right there, and then.
Hold on, Arjun. Thank you. Let's finish up. I know they want to get moving, so, okay?
Okay.
So the other thing too is that there's an assumption here that you're committed to doing this. And if you're not committed to it, you need to indicate that to the board member that you're working with. So we're going to leave this. You have instructions to the board members about getting in touch with you, getting started. We would assume, when we want the Monday start, could we do it by next Monday, calls being made, or do we want to do it the following week?
This Monday.
Pardon?
Start this week. Start right
This
away.
week.
This Monday.
So they're going to be in contact with you to make some connections with you to get the program going.
Is the board member gonna get the thing going, or is it up to
Yes,
them?
yes, yes? Oh, right, good.
Are you handing out the list today?
Yes. No, actually, we don't have copies. It's just the board members.
Can I
do.
make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Can we read off
Yeah,
now, Team David?
read yours, read yours.
Oh, okay.
No, read
My
yours.
team is David Lindgren, David Cormany, but, yes, and Desiree. That's who's on my team.
All right, the Hall of Fame team, that's mine. Elle, Kathy, and Michael Blansky, in that order.
The monsters of networking, me,
And these are great. Every group's got.
Greg Terza, Matthew Garrigan, and batting cleanup, Marty Edelberg.
Nice.
Lucky?
Jim, Jackie, and Brad, the connecting pros.
The connecting pros. Joy?
I haven't got a team name yet. Eric and Moby.
Okay. And Ken Dermer is Norwin and Tom. Okay? So they'll take the responsibility of getting in touch with you. They've got the instructions on doing it. Get you going on the whole thing, to get the call started. So,
Howard Meyer's team, just so you know, Howard Meyer's team
oh, Howard Myers.
is
sorry.
Steve Tate, Tim Reed, and Marcia.
And Mark.
And
Oh, and Mark, I'm
and
sorry.
The tip meisters is Randall, John Basilian, and Jessica, in that order.
And you got, did you get Howard's?
Yeah, we gave Howard.
So we all in with that?
Sorry to know.
Okay, good. So thanks for your patience with this. I'm sorry, my own technical thing about not bringing my projector, but thanks for listening.
Oh, fantastic,
And let's give ourselves a hand for moving forward on this.
Good job.